Tonight, you are about to fall asleep inside a city that doesn't yet know Imagine Pompeii accurately, it helps to leave behind the museum silence that surrounds the ruins now. It was noisy. It smelled of bread ovens, wine, animals, oil, sweat, garum, wet plaster, smoke, and refuse. Shops opened onto streets. Houses ranged from modest rooms to elegant atrium homes with painted walls and interior gardens. There were bars and food counters, workshops, baths, temples, and brothels. There was an amphitheater for spectacle and a forum for politics, business, and religion. The city was not a frozen tableau of marble dignity. It was crowded, commercial, practical, and often dirty, with beauty placed right beside labor. One of the reasons Pompeii grips the modern imagination so strongly is that it preserves not only monuments, but ordinary life. Bakeries with mills, taverns with jars set into counters, graffiti scratched by bored or boastful hands, and homes whose decoration reveals both wealth and aspiration. The houses tell their own story. In richer residences, an entrance from the street could lead into an atrium where light fell through an opening in the roof and rainwater collected below. Beyond that might stretch reception rooms, dining rooms, colonnaded gardens, and walls painted in brilliant reds, yellows, blacks, and delicate architectural fantasies. Roman domestic space was never only private. A house could be a business center, a display of lineage, a theater of status, a political instrument. Clients might come in the morning, guests might be entertained at dinner. Household gods watched from small shrines. Slaves worked constantly in the background, often invisible in the idealized image, but essential to the functioning of elite life. In Pompeii, these arrangements survive with unusual vividness because the eruption interrupted daily existence rather than allowing it to decay gradually. Outside those grander homes, the majority of life unfolded at a more practical level. Craftsmen shaped metal, cloth, clay, and wood. Bakers milled grain and fired loaves. Wine merchants stored and sold the produce of the region. Farmers in the surrounding countryside cultivated vines, olives, and other crops that drew their strength from the same volcanic earth that would one day betray them. The economy of Pompeii was mixed and active, tied to agriculture, but not limited to it. It sat in a rich network of villas, estates, roads, and maritime exchange. Wealth flowed through it unevenly. Some residents dined beneath painted myths. Others likely rented cramped rooms over shops. Yet all shared the same streets, the same water system, the same elections, the same baths, the same mountain. Religion was woven into everything. Pompeii had temples to Jupiter, Apollo, Venus, and other deities, as well as household cults and imperial worship. Religion in a Roman town was not separate from politics or daily life. Offerings could accompany public duties, meals, journeys, and family rituals. The city's divine landscape reflected both Rome's official order and older regional traditions. Venus, in particular, held special significance as a patroness of Pompeii. This is important when telling Pompeii's story, because the people who lived there did not think of themselves as inhabiting a secular world suddenly interrupted by natural disaster. They lived in a cosmos full of signs, obligations, auspices, gods, omens, and inherited rights. When the ground trembled, or wells behaved strangely, or animals acted oddly, such things might be read morally or religiously, not merely geologically. And the ground did tremble. Years before the final catastrophe, Pompeii suffered a severe earthquake, usually dated to 62 CE, though some ancient evidence has led scholars to discuss related shocks around that period. The damage was substantial. Buildings cracked, walls collapsed, temples and houses required repairs, and reconstruction continued for years. This matters enormously because the Pompeii destroyed in 79 CE was not a city resting in perfect completeness. It was, in part, still under repair. Builders were at work. Some structures were being renovated. Frescoes were being redone. The city that later seemed perfectly preserved was, at the moment of destruction, still unfinished, still recovering, still adjusting to an earlier warning that had not been understood as a prelude. That earlier earthquake did not empty the city. People stayed. They rebuilt because towns do not abandon themselves easily, and because rich land, established property, and familiar routines exert a powerful hold. An earthquake, even a terrible one, did not necessarily announce an apocalyptic future. Campania was earthquake-prone. Damage could be explained, absorbed, repaired. Human beings are deeply talented at normalizing danger when danger becomes part of the background. A cracked wall can be patched. A fallen statue can be raised. A damaged bath can reopen. Life can resume so completely that memory itself begins to soften at the edges. That is one of the most haunting truths in Pompeii's story. Not that people ignored a clear and obvious doom, but that they continued doing what societies always do after disaster. They repaired, traded, decorated, argued, ate, worshipped, and planned for tomorrow. By the summer, or perhaps the autumn, of 79 CE, Pompeii was alive in this unfinished but confident way. The exact date of the eruption remains debated. Ancient tradition, based above all on manuscripts of Pliny the Younger's famous letters, long fixed it on August 24th, 79 CE. But archaeological and textual evidence has led many scholars to argue for a later date in the autumn. What is not debated is the larger event itself. Vesuvius erupted catastrophically in 79 CE and buried Pompeii under volcanic material, preserving astonishing details of the town while ending the lives of many who remained there. For the people inside the city, the debate that now occupies historians would have meant nothing. Their final season, whether late summer or autumn, was still a season of ordinary acts. Bread was baked, amphorae were moved, graffiti was written, repairs continued, deals were made. People slept believing, as people usually do, that the pattern of known life would hold one more day. That is where the real story of Pompeii must begin. Not with ash falling from a black sky, not with the famous plaster forms, not with tourists moving through roofless streets 2,000 years later, but with a living town under a mountain it did not truly know. Pompeii was not tragic because it was doomed. It was tragic because it was ordinary first. It was a place of elections and shrines, gardens and workshops, frescoes and bread, ambition and repair. It had survived war, changing rulers, Roman conquest, and earthquake. It had every reason, by the logic of daily life, to imagine that it would survive longer still. The city's destruction would become one of history's most famous moments, but the people within it did not inhabit fame. They inhabited the last calm days of a town that still believed in its own future. Morning in Pompeii did not begin with silence. It never had. The city woke in layers, gradually, like a body stretching back into consciousness. Before the light fully settled into the streets, there were already sounds, soft at first, then gathering. A door opening onto stone, the low murmur of voices inside a house, the scrape of a stool, the clatter of pottery, somewhere a mule shifting its weight, hooves knocking faintly against the ground. Pompeii stirred before the sun fully claimed it. Light entered the city unevenly. It slipped through doorways, over tiled roofs, into narrow streets where shadows still lingered. In wealthier homes, it fell through the opening of the atrium, touching the shallow pool beneath, reflecting upward in soft ripples onto painted walls. In smaller dwellings, it pushed through whatever space it could find, illuminating cramped rooms and the outlines of lives already in motion. There was no single Pompeii waking up. There were many Pompeiis layered together, rich and poor, public and private, loud and quiet. A baker would already be at work. His day began long before most others, when the air was still cool and the sky not yet fully bright. Inside the bakery, the millstones turned slowly, powered by animals or laborers walking in circles, grinding grain into flour. The sound was steady, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Flour dust hung in the air, catching the early light, settling on skin, on hair, on everything. Dough was prepared in large quantities, shaped, marked, and placed into ovens that would soon radiate heat into the room. Bread in Pompeii was not a luxury. It was a daily necessity, and bakeries were essential to the life of the city. By the time the streets filled, loaves would be ready, stacked, and sold to customers who might not think twice about the labor already spent that morning. Nearby, a shopkeeper might be lifting the wooden shutters that closed his storefront overnight. These shutters often folded outward and doubled as counters, creating a space between seller and passerby. Goods would be arranged carefully: jars, baskets, tools, food, whatever trade defined the shop. Pompeii's streets were lined with such businesses, each one small, practical, and necessary. There were places to buy wine, food, oil, cloth, and countless other items. The economy of the city was not distant or abstract. It unfolded directly onto the street, visible to anyone who walked past. And people did walk. The streets began to fill as the morning deepened. Sandals struck stone. Voices rose. Conversations overlapped and faded. Someone greeted a neighbor. Someone argued about price. Someone hurried. Someone lingered. The worn stones beneath their feet told their own story, carved over years by wheels and steps. Deep grooves marked where carts had passed again and again, and raised stepping stones allowed pedestrians to cross streets that could become dirty or wet. Pompeii was not designed for quiet contemplation. It was designed for movement, for function, for life pressing forward. Water flowed constantly through parts of the city. Public fountains, fed by an aqueduct system, provided fresh water to neighborhoods. These fountains were not decorative luxuries. They were practical centers of daily activity. People gathered there with containers, filling them, talking, exchanging news. The sound of water spilling into basins added to the background rhythm of the city, a steady, reassuring presence. Water was life, and its availability shaped how the city functioned. The rhythm of the city shifted slightly, not slowing, but changing in tone. Morning urgency softened into something more measured, more sustained. In the Forum, activity did not stop, but it spread out, less compressed than in the earlier hours. Conversations stretched longer. Business continued, but without the same edge of beginning. Deals were confirmed, disputes negotiated, small arguments flared and faded. A man might pause beneath a portico, wiping sweat from his brow, considering his next move. Another might linger after a discussion, reluctant to step back into the heat. The stones beneath their feet held warmth now, and every step carried that reminder. Elsewhere, food became the focus. In homes across Pompeii, meals were being prepared. Not the elaborate evening banquets of the wealthy, but practical, sustaining food. Bread from the morning's baking, olives, cheese, perhaps fruit or leftovers from the previous day. In more prosperous houses, there might be more variety, more care in presentation. But even there, the midday meal was not the central performance of the day. It was a pause, a necessary replenishment before continuing. At street-side counters, customers gathered. Large ceramic jars were set into the counters, holding prepared foods, stews, grains, wine. These places offered convenience, especially for those who did not have the means or time to prepare meals at home. People stood or sat nearby, eating, talking, watching others pass. The city's life remained visible even during rest. There was no retreat into silence, no separation from the public world. Even eating could be a shared, exposed experience. The heat carried smells more strongly now. Cooking, waste, animals, human bodies, all of it thickened in the air. Pompeii was not unpleasant to its inhabitants, in the way it might seem to a modern visitor imagining it, but it was undeniably intense. Sensory life was constant. Nothing was sealed away. Nothing was hidden behind systems designed to remove or neutralize it. The city existed fully in its own presence, and everyone within it was part of that. In workshops, work continued despite the temperature. A metal worker might pause to drink, then return to his task. A dyer might stir vats of color, the surface shimmering under the light. A carpenter might adjust a piece of wood, measuring, shaping, correcting. Labor did not stop simply because the day grew hot. It adapted. Movements might slow slightly. Breaks might be taken more often. But the necessity of work remained, binding people to their tasks regardless of discomfort. In the baths, the atmosphere was different. Here, the heat was controlled, intentional, part of the experience. People moved through the sequence of rooms, from warm to hot to cold, their bodies adjusting, relaxing. Conversations unfolded more freely. The baths allowed for a kind of pause that the rest of the city did not easily offer. Time felt different there, less urgent, more suspended. It was one of the few places where the intensity of daily life could be softened, if only for a while. Children found their own ways through the day. They might play in shaded areas, their energy less restrained by heat than that of adults. They might run errands, help with small tasks, or simply observe. The city, with all its movement and noise, was also their environment of discovery. They learned its patterns without thinking, absorbing the structure of daily life simply by being within it. Above everything, the sky remained clear. It gave no obvious sign of what was forming beneath or within the mountain. If anything, The brightness of the day reinforced the sense of normalcy. Catastrophe, when it comes, rarely announces itself in a language people immediately understand. It builds quietly, invisibly, until the moment it can no longer be contained. There were tremors again, small, brief, not strong enough to cause widespread alarm. A vibration underfoot, a slight shift. Objects might rattle, then settle. People noticed. They always noticed. But noticing is not the same as acting. The memory of the earlier earthquake lingered, but it had become part of the past. Something survived rather than something ongoing. Each new tremor could be interpreted as an echo, not a warning. Some might have felt unease, a hesitation, a glance toward the mountain, a moment of stillness in the middle of motion. But unease is easily overridden by habit. The structure of daily life is powerful. It tells people what to do next, where to go, how to continue. And so they continued. In wealthier homes, preparations for the evening might already be beginning. Dinner, unlike the midday meal, carried social weight. Invitations, seating, presentation, all of it mattered. Slaves moved through kitchens and storage areas, organizing, preparing, anticipating. The house would transform later into a space of display and interaction. But that transformation required planning, even in a world without modern complexity. In more modest settings, the evening would be simpler, but still anticipated. Work would end, food would be shared. There would be a shift from labor to rest, however brief or limited. People moved toward that expectation without knowing that, for many, it would never fully arrive. The city was holding itself together in the way it always had. Every system functioning, every role being played, every space occupied. There is something deeply human in that continuity. Even in the presence of uncertainty, even with subtle disturbances beneath the surface, life does not pause itself easily. It moves forward. no longer part of the background. It had become an event. Once the column rose above Vesuvius, Pompeii was no longer living through an ordinary afternoon. The change may not have been understood at once, but it could not be ignored for long. A mountain that had spent years as a fixed shape on the horizon had suddenly become motion. What had been still was now violently active. What had been background was now impossible to look away from. At first, the city would have responded as cities always do when the familiar order breaks. Not with one single emotion, but with many at once. Curiosity came first for some, alarm for others, denial for many. Questions spread quickly, faster than any official explanation could have. People stepped out into streets, onto thresholds, into courtyards. Faces lifted toward the same terrible sight. The column climbed higher and higher, dark at its core, pale around its edges in places, twisting as it rose. It was not the kind of thing a person forgot after seeing it. Even before the danger reached Pompeii directly, the certainty of ordinary life had already been cracked. The eruption had begun. Deep below the mountain, pressure built by gas-rich magma had broken upward with explosive force, driving rock fragments, ash, and gas into the sky in a vast vertical plume. The people of Pompeii did not know the mechanics of this, of course. They had no language of pressure chambers and eruptive columns. They had only their senses. They could see the immense cloud. They could hear, perhaps distantly at first, the thunder-like violence from the mountain. They could feel that the world had shifted into a different condition. Some people would have acted immediately. There are always those who do. They gathered family, valuables, clothing, food, documents, whatever could be carried. They looked for relatives. They shouted for children. They secured doors out of instinct, even when doors no longer meant much. Perhaps some thought first, not of escape, but of protection, assuming the danger would pass quickly if they just waited indoors. Others likely moved toward the roads at once, determined to get away while movement still seemed possible. But a city does not empty in an instant. That is one of the most important things to understand. Pompeii was not a camp waiting to be struck. It was a living town with houses, businesses, obligations, elderly people, children, slaves, The air itself must have felt abrasive. Every inhalation carried ash. Every movement demanded strength on unstable ground. Children would have tired quickly, older people even more so. The injured had almost no chance. Those pinned by collapse, trapped in houses, separated in darkness, were already close to the limits of endurance. The city was being transformed from a place of life into a field of obstacles. And still, though they could not know it, the deadliest phase had not yet arrived. What fell from the sky was terrible enough. It crushed roofs, blinded streets, and drove fear into every hour. But the eruption of Vesuvius held another violence in reserve, one far faster and more final than the rain of pumice. Beneath the towering column, as its structure changed and instability grew, deadly currents of hot gas, ash, and fragmented material were beginning to form. When they came, decisions would matter less. Distance would matter more. Shelter would matter less. Speed would matter more. The slow burial of Pompeii was moving towards something swifter, darker, and almost impossible to outrun. For now, though, the city still struggled in the falling stone, believing perhaps that survival depended on withstanding one more hour, one more collapse, one more stretch of choking darkness. And in that terrible belief, many stayed. Sometime in the night, or in the black, false night that had replaced any ordinary sense of time, Pompeii crossed from terror into annihilation. For hours, the city had endured the falling pumice. It had been battered, buried gradually, strained under weight and darkness. Roofs had collapsed. People had fled or hidden or hesitated. Streets had become difficult to pass. Air had filled with ash. Yet through all of that, survival had still seemed possible. A person might believe, even in misery, that if the stones would just stop falling, if the darkness would just ease, if dawn would just come, then escape or rescue or simple endurance might still be enough. But Vesuvius was not finished. The great eruption column rising above the mountain, which had hurled ash just danger, but the collapse of their mental map of home. And then the mountain sent something worse than falling stone. The first deadly surges from Vesuvius did not necessarily destroy Pompeii immediately, in the way later imagination sometimes compresses the event. Herculaneum, lying in a different position relative to the volcano, suffered catastrophic pyroclastic effects earlier and more directly. Pompeii, farther away and differently placed, endured the prolonged pumice fall before the lethal surges and flows associated with the collapse of the eruption column reached it decisively. This sequence matters because it means many people in Pompeii lived long enough to experience not one disaster, but several, layered one upon another. The final killer came after ordeal, not instead of it. When those currents approached, they would not have announced themselves with a neat visible edge easily interpreted in darkness. There may have been roaring, sudden changes in the air, unbearable heat, movement of ash and gas through streets and openings, an overwhelming force entering the city's already broken spaces. A pyroclastic surge is not like lava crawling visibly along the ground. It is more sudden, more diffuse, more invasive. It fills, it penetrates, it overwhelms. Doors, windows, courtyards, alleys, public buildings, and upper rooms cease to be meaningful protection when such a cloud lost, property was lost, taxable land was affected, households were broken apart. A town famous to us for its final day was, to the Romans, also one disaster among many that had to be reckoned with in the business of empire, and yet no imperial effort could restore the place itself. Pompeii had not burned like an ordinary city, leaving rubble to be cleared and walls to be rebuilt. It had been entombed. The labor required to recover such a town was beyond ordinary civic repair, and whatever hope some survivors may have held in the first days or weeks must have faded as reality became unmistakable. The streets were gone beneath meters of compacted volcanic debris. The familiar map of urban life had been smothered under a landscape that no longer resembled a functioning town. Even if the tops of certain larger structures remained partly visible for a time, the city as a living environment had ended. Later evidence suggests people did return to salvage valuables and building materials where they could, but salvage is not restoration. It is the act of admitting that home has become a ruin. So imagine those first returns. Not tourists, not archaeologists, not poets, survivors, laborers, officials, thieves perhaps, men looking for a family shrine, a box of coins, a bronze vessel, a buried doorway they still believed they could find. They would not have walked into the Pompeii we know now, with open streets and exposed facades. They would have moved over and around a changed surface, searching by memory and guesswork. Perhaps a wall top still showed through in places. Perhaps a section of public building could still be recognized. Perhaps someone stood over a buried district and tried to count how many houses inward their own had once been. The horror of such searching lies in its uncertainty. To know a place intimately and then find that intimacy useless against burial is a special kind of defeat. Some things were certainly taken. Archaeology has shown evidence of post-eruption disturbance, and scholars have long understood that the buried cities were not sealed away forever from all human intrusion. Tunnels, holes, and signs of later entry suggest that valuables were sought after the disaster. Marble, metal, and portable wealth had obvious attraction. This does not lessen the tragedy, it deepens it. Once a city dies, others come to strip what they can from its body. Public space becomes quarry, house becomes cache, memory becomes opportunity. Even in antiquity, Pompeii was already beginning its second life, not as a town, but as a buried source of things to recover. And then, slowly, time did what time always does. Vegetation returned, soil settled, names blurred, roads shifted, generations passed. The eruption remained in literature because of Pliny the Younger's letters, but literature preserves an event differently from landscape. An event can survive in words, while its exact location slips from common knowledge. Pompeii was not remembered every day by the world as a precise topography underfoot. It became part of a region's deep past, one ruined among others, one memory among many in a land already rich with Greek, Italic, and Roman remains. Centuries do not merely pass over a site, they soften it, recover it, detach it from the ordinary certainty of place. By late antiquity and the Middle Ages, the city was no longer a town anyone expected to walk back into and reopen. It belonged to another layer of the world. There is something almost eerie in that long silence. Not the silence of complete oblivion, but the silence of partial forgetting. Enough memory remained that the disaster itself was never wholly lost. Yet the streets stayed buried. Frescoes stayed in darkness. Loaves carbonized in ovens stayed where they had fallen. Graffiti remained on walls no eye would read for centuries. Rooms that had once held laughter, bargaining, prayer, and sleep sat in compressed blackness, protected by the very material that had destroyed them. Time above ground kept moving, empires changing, languages shifting, religions transforming, while beneath that ground, Pompeii waited in a stillness so total that even its unfinished repairs remained unfinished. Then, many centuries later, chance began tugging at the edge of the burial. One of the earliest significant encounters with the buried remains came in the late 16th century, when the architect Domenico Fontana, working on a canal project, cut through parts of the site without understanding the full significance of what lay there. That moment did not immediately reveal Pompeii to the world in any complete way, but it mattered. The dead city had been touched again, not awakened, not recognized, but disturbed. A wall here, an inscription there, a hint that the ground held something older and larger than ordinary soil and stone. The rediscovery of buried places often begins like that, not with a dramatic unveiling, but with an accidental wound in the earth. Even then, recognition was slow. The 18th century, with its appetite for antiquity, royal collecting, and systematic digging, brought a more determined turning toward the Vesuvian sites. Herculaneum was discovered in 1709, and more organized excavations began there in 1738. Work at Pompeii began in 1748. Yet even those early excavators did not at once possess the modern archaeological mindset. They were often looking for statues, paintings, precious objects, marvels for courts and collections, not necessarily for the complete patient recovery of an ancient urban world. Pompeii emerged piece by piece under motives both scholarly and acquisitive, and that mixed beginning shaped the way it first returned to human view. Picture that first reopening after so much time. A laborer's tool cuts into packed volcanic material. Light enters a void where no light has entered for centuries. A painted wall appears, colors still startlingly alive. A doorway emerges. A room is found not as ruin in the usual sense, weathered by open sky, but as something enclosed, suspended, sealed. The effect on those who first saw such things must have been extraordinary. Ancient Rome was no longer only in books, inscriptions, and broken columns reused elsewhere. Here was domestic life, civic life, urban texture, held in a condition that seemed almost impossible. Pompeii did not merely survive as architecture, it survived as interruption. As excavation spread, the city began to speak. Its streets appeared again, its forum, its baths, its houses, some grand, some modest. Election notices painted on walls. Casual graffiti scratched by hands that had never imagined an audience 2 millennia later. Shop counters still set for trade. Amphorae, cooking vessels, garden spaces, workshops, temples, bedrooms, courtyards. In most ancient cities, centuries of rebuilding erase this kind of closeness. But Pompeii had been sealed rather than continuously occupied, and so it gave back not only monuments, but habits. It restored the scale of everyday Roman life with a force no literary source alone could match. Scholars have long recognized that the excavation of Pompeii and the neighboring Vesuvian sites transformed the study of antiquity and helped shape modern archaeology itself. Still, early excavation also damaged what it uncovered. This is part of the history too, and it deserves honesty. The reopening of Pompeii was not a perfect rescue. Methods changed over time. Earlier diggers sometimes prioritized objects over context, removed works for display, or exposed fragile surfaces without the conservation standards later archaeology would strive for. To uncover is also to end a second kind of protection. Once a fresco sees sunlight again, it begins to fade. Once a wall is re-exposed to weather, it begins a new form of decay. Pompeii was preserved by burial, but excavation made it vulnerable again. The city's third life, as a ruin visited, studied, and admired, has always carried that paradox at its heart. In the 19th century, a crucial change came with Giuseppe Fiorelli, who took charge of the excavations in 1860 and brought far more systematic methods to the work. He also developed, in 1863, the plaster cast technique that would become one of the most haunting features of Pompeii's modern identity. Where bodies had once lain, they had decomposed within the hardened volcanic deposits, leaving cavities. By pouring plaster into those voids, excavators could capture the forms of the dead in their final positions. The method was not magic, it was a response to absence. Yet the result was devastatingly immediate. Human posture restored from emptiness, fear made visible, death given shape. And that changed Pompeii forever in the modern imagination. Before the casts, the sight was already astonishing. After the casts, it became intimate in a new and terrible way. A city can be admired as architecture. It can be studied as history. But when the curled form of a victim appears before you, all distance collapses. The eruption is no longer merely an event and artists were intensely interested in classical antiquity. But until sites like Pompeii and Herculaneum began to be uncovered, much of what people imagined about Rome came through texts, sculptures, and surviving monumental architecture. Pompeii changed the scale of imagination. Rome was no longer only senators, generals, poets, and emperors. It was also shopkeepers, painted bedrooms, garden walls, taverns, bakery ovens, and election notices. The past was no longer an idealized marble stage. It became habitable, detailed, and at times uncomfortably familiar. Painters borrowed from Pompeian color and decorative schemes. Architects and interior designers imitated motifs drawn from the excavated houses. The neoclassical movement, already developing in conversation with the wider rediscovery of antiquity, found in Pompeii a reservoir of forms that seemed at once elegant and intimate. The city's wall paintings, in particular, opened a visual conversation across centuries. Delicate columns painted where no real column stood, mythological scenes framed within vivid panels, gardens rendered in illusionistic depth, birds, masks, sacred emblems, and fine ornamental patterns all entered the modern eye with extraordinary force. Pompeii was not only studied, it was absorbed. But admiration alone cannot explain its hold on the imagination. What made Pompeii unforgettable was the collision between beauty and catastrophe. A painted room is moving. A painted room buried in an instant is haunting. A loaf of bread is ordinary. A loaf of bread left in an oven by a disaster 2,000 years old becomes something almost unbearable in its simplicity. The city's power lay in this interruption. Everything seemed to have been stopped, not by slow ruin, but by objects without always recording context carefully. Modern restoration has sometimes altered what visitors think they see. Pompeii is one of the richest sources for Roman life, but it is not a time machine. It is evidence, and evidence must be interpreted. Still, interpretation never wholly diminishes wonder. A person walking through Pompeii can stand in the forum and imagine the civic life of the town. They can enter a house and feel the movement from public reception space to more intimate domestic areas. They can see the compact shape of a shop opening directly onto the street and understand how little separation existed between commerce and daily passage. They can step into a bath complex and recognize the sophistication of Roman engineering and social custom. They can look at the stepping stones in the streets and see how pedestrians navigated water and muck. They can read the wall inscriptions and realize that ordinary urban talk once filled these spaces just as surely as footsteps did. There is almost no part of the city that does not provoke both knowledge and imagination at once. A brothel reveals details of commercial sex, but also raises questions about naming, clientele, and the uncertain line between complicates and deepens every written source. Artists come for color, form, atmosphere, and the emotional force of beauty held inside catastrophe. Travelers come because the name itself has become magnetic, almost impossible to resist. Even people who know little about Roman history know Pompeii. The city's destruction has entered the world's cultural memory so completely that it now feels almost like a legend. Yet, when one stands among its streets, the legend dissolves into something harder, smaller, and more human. A doorway, a worn threshold, a faded bit of red on a wall, a staircase cut off by absence, a fountain basin where water once spilled, a courtyard open to the sky. The remains are never merely grand, they are intimate, and intimacy is what history so rarely preserves. To walk through Pompeii now is to experience time in an unusual way. The mind keeps shifting between scales. One moment, you see the ancient city as a whole, its public buildings and roads, its forum, its gates, its order within the Roman landscape. The next moment, your attention catches on something tiny, a scratched word, a household shrine, a mosaic at the entrance of a home, an oven chamber, an amphora set into a place where it once served a purpose no one questioned. The city moves you from empire to household in a few steps. It reminds you that history is made not only by great powers, but by ordinary repetitions that seem too small to matter until they are all that remain. There is another reason Pompeii endures so strongly. It strips away the illusion that the past was ever truly distant from us in human terms. The clothes are different, the gods are different, the political structures, technologies, and assumptions are different, but the pattern of life is not unrecognizable. People worried about money, status, reputation, desire, safety, family, aging, business, and tomorrow's meal. They decorated their homes. They sought pleasure. They argued. They endorsed political candidates. They gossiped. They ate in a hurry. They repaired damage and expected things to continue. They lived inside the ordinary confidence that the world they knew would still be there in the morning. That confidence is ancient, and it is modern too. Pompeii reveals how fragile that confidence has always been, not because catastrophe is constant, but because routine is so persuasive. People do not wake each day expecting the end of their world. They wake expecting errands, obligations, and familiar irritations. That is why the destruction of Pompeii feels perpetually immediate. The city was not caught in a mythic posture of doom. It was caught in the middle of being itself. The baker was not performing symbolism. The family was not posing for memory. The worker, the merchant, the child, the homeowner, the slave, the traveler, the priest, the bather, none of them were acting for posterity. They were living. And then, suddenly, they were not. This is the deepest sadness of Pompeii, but also its deepest gift. It restores scale to the human past. Empires encourage us to think in abstractions: conquest, law, administration, territory, power. Pompeii returns us to the room, the doorway, the meal, the wall, the handprint of habit. It reminds us that every empire was also a vast accumulation of ordinary days. Most of those days vanished completely. Pompeii, by terrible chance, kept some of them. Of course, even that preservation has limits. We do not know most of the city's inhabitants by name. We cannot hear the true sound of their voices. We cannot recover every thought that passed through the final hours, nor identify every relationship, every fear, every kindness, every act of selfishness or courage. Archaeology narrows the distance, but it does not abolish it. The dead remain partly hidden from us, as they must. There is dignity in admitting that. Pompeii feels close, but it is not ours. It is still a lost city. Its intimacy should make us careful